The Day the Earth Stood Still is a science fiction classic. While its plot is heavily tied to the nuclear era in which it was created, the underlying parable is timeless and just as effective 70 years later. So some Hollywood executive thought, why not let the genius mind behind Hellraiser 5 have a crack at it? And thus, we're here today to discuss the 2008 blockbuster remake of The Day the Earth Stood Still. Welcome everyone to the Atomic Cinema Experiment. I am Peter, and joining me as always is Tara.
Greetings, citizens.
And of course, this is a science fiction movie podcast. We get together, we watch a sci-fi movie, and we talk about it. And for some reason, when Tara had carte blanche and could pick anything she wanted to do on the show, it's not actually her birthday anymore. It was her birthday like 2 weeks ago, but we had something scheduled as a birthday pick, and for some reason she decided to pick the remake of The Day the Earth Stood Still.
That's right.
Would you care to explain this pick?
I'd seen this movie in the theaters, and mostly because, I've been thinking about The Day the Earth Stood Still since Strange New Worlds used it in their pilot episode. I thought we should probably revisit that. I want to do that. And I know it's like an easy watch because I remember watching it before. So I thought, let's just knock this out. It'd be good. It'd be good to do the comparison,
Yeah, and it's worth mentioning our first ever episode was the original Day the Earth Stood Still.
Yeah. We're long overdue to do the reboot.
Yeah, if it was ever necessary at all, I suppose. I think that's open for debate. But yeah, this is the Keanu Reeves starring movie. I actually had a nasty surprise because I had seen this not long after it came out as well. I barely remembered anything about it. I remember Keanu Reeves and Jennifer Connelly were in it, but that was about it. I remembered a lot of bad CG, and we'll discuss if that memory was accurate as we go into it later. But what I didn't know about this film, and probably because I didn't know who it was when I first saw this, is when I was watching it for this and the opening titles were playing out, it got to the end of them and it said directed by Scott Derrickson, and I had a shiver go down my spine, and I'm like, this guy is shit. Like, this movie, Doctor Strange and Sinister, like, this guy is horrible.
I don't hate Scott Derrickson like you do. Like, I don't mind Sinister. I thought that was an okay watch. Some good scares. I don't mind. Didn't he do like The Exorcism of Emily Rose?
Yeah, I haven't seen that though.
I didn't mind that one. I mean, it's a little disappointing, but like it wasn't a bad watch. Some of the scenes really stuck with me. Same with Sinister. What's the other one? Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange was fine. I know you don't like it, but like, I don't know. I'm neutral on him. I don't know. This isn't the same kind of hate as like the Resident Evil guy.
Oh, Paul W.S. Anderson is worse, but like this guy's got a ceiling of like a 5 out of 10. Like that's where his ceiling is. So there's nothing to be excited about when I see his name, because part of me went into this thinking, oh, maybe I'm misremembering, maybe I was in a bad mood when I saw it, maybe it'll work better for me this time. And I saw his name and went, oh no.
I mean, he's written by somebody else. I don't know who it was. Excuse me, but.
I don't know who David Scarpa is. That's the writer who adapted the original screenplay. I mean, my bigger problem with Derrickson though tends to be his directing style. I'm sure he has a hand in how the script is handled and translated to the screen and all that, but I don't like how he directs. I don't like his like pacing of editing. Obviously he's not the one editing it directly, but you know what I mean, like he's still the one making those calls of like how quickly cut it should be and things like that. And I don't know, there's something really like just generic Hollywood about he cuts these movies together that just feels very basic to me.
The movie reminds me of like the first Transformers a lot. This one, like watching it, I have flashes of the first Transformer movies, the Michael Bay one. And also War of the Worlds, the Steven Spielberg War of the Worlds.
Well, this is only a year after the first Transformers, and it's about 3 years after the Spielberg War of the Worlds, so those are not wild things to compare it to, really. Yeah, so if you don't know the premise of Day the Earth Stood Still, I should get that out of the way before we get into this. We'll start spoiler free, of course. We'll give you warning before we get to spoilers. But the basic gist of the original, I'll give you the original premise first, and then we can kind of expand on it from there. So the original movie is an alien comes down in a spaceship named Klaatu. Klaatu Reeves. I joke. Klaatu comes down, and he wants to meet with the leaders of the world. He wants to like give them a message, but of course no one is going to let him just walk up to the president and other leaders. He faces resistance, but he gets help from some people. He meets a scientist, and it's all about this. The idea is the aliens have started to notice Earth because now Earth has nuclear weapons, that they could be dangerous now, so we kind of have to step in and tell them to cut it out because this is like a bad path to go down. And so it's a very socially conscious film with a moral, the original film. The remake, because no one's really talking about nuclear weapons anymore, shifts it to more of a climate change discussion. But the basic gist is still kind of the same. It's a lot more action based, it's a lot glossier and over the top in how it introduces things. But essentially it's the same thing, where an alien named Klaatu comes down. In this case it's played by Keanu Reeves, and he wants to meet with the UN. At least, he says that. The rest of the movie doesn't really follow up in that, but he does say that initially. And of course it's a lot more action, there's a lot more CG, there's a lot more explosions and near-death scenarios. The original film is very much this thinking science fiction piece where it's more about trying to have a conversation. It's not a one-to-one, but in a lot of ways it's what you think about. You think about the original Star Trek series, then you think about J.J. Abrams doing his movie. It's very much that transition, perhaps an even bigger one in this case, because at least Star Trek in the 60s still kind of tried to have a bit of action, even though it was limited by its resources at the time, whereas Day the Earth still didn't really do much action, right? There's the one sequence when they first land and the army's kind of there, and there's a little bit of tension, but it's not the focus of the movie outright. It creates tension in other ways, by and large. So, yes, Jennifer Connelly is the scientist lady who ends up sort of befriending him. She has a stepson that she's been sort of saddled with because her partner died. And I did not notice this. I just noticed his name in the IMDb. This was Jaden Smith, so we'll talk about him.
That's right.
I didn't notice it was him in the movie. I didn't recognize him. What?
Nothing. Lots of Jaden Smith fans out there would be happy to hear that he's in this.
Is there? Will Smith has fans. I don't know if Jaden Smith has fans.
I'll stick up for him for two films. I liked Pursuit of Happiness. He was so cute in that. Oh my god. But he was much younger. Oh, not that much younger, I guess. And then I actually enjoyed the Karate Kid remake with him.
I haven't seen it.
Good. Yeah.
Did that movie?
It's all right.
Wait, did that movie address though that Jackie Chan's not Japanese? And yeah, it's karate.
Well, it takes place in China.
So it's not karate?
I don't think so, no.
So
it's just the title.
So the title's a complete lie.
I'm sure.
I never saw it, but...
It's still a good movie.
I'll take your word for it. I did not see it. Yeah, we also have John Cleese, John Hamm. I'm sure some other Johns in there somewhere, but those two there.
Yeah, I was surprised to see both of them in there. I forgot that they were in it.
Well,
I don't think John Hamm wasn't a name yet. So.
Yeah, this is, I think, this around the same time as Mad Men was starting, so this would have been right just as he was going to become someone who people knew.
John Cleese, I obviously know, but I didn't remember he was in it.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, so... Oh, Kathy Bates as well. Kathy Bates is the political government person who's given orders.
You seem so bored describing this movie. You've got zero energy.
Because it's shit.
Okay, well, don't give all your thoughts away all at once.
Well, I mean, to sum it up, right, without having to get into anything, Like, the movie starts off just kind of like clinical and like hollow, right? It starts off as a hollow Hollywood movie that just feels like it's missing kind of the point of the original film. But then as it goes, it gets worse. Like, see, by the time you get to the second half and you have like what's going to happen to the world, and you have like all these like really like some of the CG in this, and there's so much CG, and you don't need it. That's the thing. You watch the original Day the Earth Stood Still, and there's like almost no need for anything to be replaced. The one thing that stuck out in that movie that has been a little dated was the robot.
Gort.
Gort the robot. And honestly, I think it looks worse than this one.
I would agree. Yeah. The CG just doesn't work for Gort in this.
Yeah. Like, I'm shocked. If there was one thing I would assumed was better, if there was one thing, I mean, obviously the design might have changed, and that's like a more subjective thing we could like critique.
Yeah, but he's like 4 stories tall.
Yeah, but he's otherwise got the same kind of like design. Like they've remained faithful to the shape and kind of the one like, you know, I-beam kind of thing.
Right.
But he just looks bad though. Like the actual texture and just. It just looks like this big fake thing.
CG to me, that's all. Not, I wouldn't say it's a bad design. I just think he looks CG. Like you said, it's kind of just an updated design from the original.
Well, that's what I'm saying. The design's not the problem because they haven't really changed it, really. I mean, they've made them bigger, but like other than that,
I mean, he's kind of intimidating when he first shows up. He's pretty intimidating.
Joey reminds me of. He reminds me of the villain in the first Thor movie. You know, they've got the big sort of robot-y thing from
the frost giant thing.
No, the robot-y thing, the destroyer, or whatever it's called. It was giving me that vibes, but it looked a bit worse. Which, admittedly, it's like, it's 3 years before that, so I guess technically it should look worse than that. But yeah, but I was gobsmacked by how bad he looked, and that's quite early on in the film. And then there's other bad. There's like CGI helicopters later on that look really bad. There's CG like drones that look really bad. There's a moment later on in the film where Jennifer Connelly and Jaden Smith like walk out. It's right near the end of the film. I won't spoil what's going on, but as they're walking, the ground is CG and it looks really like stupid because they're kind of like the shadows don't quite hit it properly, and it's like it's just got that disconnect. You know when someone touches something that's not really there, so it's CG, and there's that kind of like it's that, but it's like every footstep's that. So it's really jarring and just looked really bad. And it's not, I mean, obviously the CG is not the worst of this movie's problems. There's you know, like it wants to tackle climate change. It basically doesn't really answer any of those questions. It doesn't actually. The arc in the movie should be the humans, but it's actually Klaatu who has the arc, so I'll get into that, and that's kind of stupid. Like there's so much that doesn't work.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Like, you know, the whole thing is like, oh, humans are screwing up the planet. This is why the aliens need to step in. But like, the movie's then about like, no, humans are worth saving, regardless of how much shit they're doing to the planet. So there's, you know. Anyway, you know, we'll get into all that stuff in detail and spoilers. What do you think of the Day the Earth Stood Still remake?
Well, to start off, I'll say that I really love the original. I actually watched it again this morning because I just wanted to have it fresh for comparison, and it's still a 10 in my book. I think the original movie is so good and such a great message and great tension. It's just so much frustration, so much emotion comes out of me when I watch that movie. The kid's amazing. Gort, even though he looks a little dated, I still love him. I love a good robot. I love Klaatu in there is very stoic and intimidating, but still. What, you think this is all leading up to something?
I'm just laughing because like you're being very enthusiastic right now, but you're to do it. You're actually having to talk about the original to have this positivity, which makes me think that there's going to be a swerve in a minute.
I will say that this version of the film, I understand why they're doing climate change, and I think it makes sense for the time that it's coming out. I don't hate the themes of it, but it just pales in comparison when you watch the original. The original just gets so much out of me, and it's a lot of the dialogue between like Klaatu and like the politicians is just straight from the original film, but I don't feel that frustration anymore. And it might just because of the way it's directed or edited, but I'm not getting the reactions that the original movie does. And it's, like a, almost 70-year-old film, 60, 70-year-old film. So like,
well, I think,
yeah, I mean, I don't think that the movie is as bad as you're saying it is, but I do think it's a failure of a film.
Right, so we've got a range here of absolute turd to a failure.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is a failure. I think it's just, it just doesn't. If you're gonna remake a classic and put a modern day spin on it, then like, sure, I'm all for it. But
I can agree with
it.
I can agree with failure. I think one of the reasons why the dialogue that's just lifted from the original doesn't work is because in the original, Klaatu is being very peaceful and he's trying to just have a conversation with the right people and they're not listening to him, and that makes it very frustrating. Whereas this movie, it goes out of its way to make Klaatu kind of disgusting because he has this whole birthing thing before he becomes human looking, and it's like, you can just sort of say like, well, why would he look human? We have to sort of do this. So maybe he intentionally changes into a human, so there's like a gestation period. Like it's just like, you can almost hear the writer's room.
Well, sure, because like doing just a Klaatu that looks like a human, I mean, he has to look human because he has to walk among us, but then why would he look human? Like I understand why they went through that, and I was okay with it. And clearly you're not okay with it, but it makes sense. Like, for a modern day film, you can't just have him show up and look like a man anymore.
Don't make it they are stood still. Make something new.
But that's the whole point, is to make a new film about climate change, but use the same premise, because it was very effective, Well,
all you're going to get is comparisons, and like this is what. But to the point I was getting at though is that you have this like, we're going to make him more alien and more kind of disgusting, and he's going to come off inherently more like antagonistic to the humans because they're going to be more antagonistic to him, if not in the actual words they're saying, and certainly in the implications and how they talk to him. So I can't believe this movie made me side with him. Like I wanted the humans to die in this movie. I hated them. Jaden Smith is awful in this. This kid in this movie is a nightmare.
Yeah, I mean, they did it on purpose. For like the theme of the film or whatever of humanity, but it's still, it's irritating. And I don't think he's a terrible child actor, but he's not good in this at all.
But you can have like a layered character where you get the same point across without it being just this one note, constant annoying same beat over and over again, which is, my dad is dead. Like there's a moment where he hugs.
You're not my real mom.
There's a moment where he hugs Jennifer Connelly and he has this really awful delivery of I think it's he left me or something like that, but he yells it out into her arm as he's hugging her, and it made me laugh because it was just awful.
You know what? I had flashes of Moonfall with Halle Berry and her son in that. He was so bad.
Yes.
Bad in a good way, though. Bad in a way that I enjoyed watching.
I would agree that you could compare this film to Moonfall in many ways. Yes, I agree with that.
Well, I really like Moonfall. Moonfall's a lot of stupid fun, and you can quote me on that.
Your delusions are not up for debate here.
You're crazy. Moonfall's so much fun. Anyway, back to this film. I think that, especially because all right, we're just gonna compare everything to the original because it's a masterpiece, but like the relationship between Klaatu and the young boy in that movie was really special because it was like just the kid just saw him as a guy an older man who had everything figured out. Where I come from, we don't have wars. Oh, that's a good idea. Just the simplicity of the way he thinks, and it's just such a special relationship. And in this, I mean, he and Jaden Smith are just antagonistic the entire time. Like, he's just in the way, Oh,
Jaden Smith repeatedly says things like, we should kill him, Mom. We should just kill the alien.
Definitely not the same relationship at all. But, I mean, I see why they did it, why they went that direction for this film, because of the whole idea that humans can't change until they're at the brink.
Yeah, but here's the problem. That is the second time you've said, I can see why they made this choice in this film. The problem is that understanding why they technically made a choice and why on theory it should work, and it's another to actually for it to make sense in the movie and actually achieve a result. And if it didn't achieve a result, then they did something wrong with the execution, and therefore it's a problem. Like when I make fun
That's what I'm saying, the movie is a failure.
when I make fun of this movie and I yell about things that are in it, it's not me necessarily saying that every single individual idea is a horrible idea on its own. I'm saying that it doesn't work to achieve the effect that I think this movie wants to achieve, and not just because I'm compared to what the original achieved, but just like what this movie's setting out to be by the end. It makes us want to be like, yes, he's seen how beautiful humanity is, so maybe he's not going to like, you know, let horrible things happen to the earth. And then it just, I don't know, like the characters are actively either very one note and blank or unlikable, and that's a problem. And you compare that to the original, where like the women that he talks to and the boy, right, both feel very kind of like warm relationships where you can sort of tell that like he will truly regret if he has to like destroy the planet, or if he has to like whatever the, you know, he's going to let Gort destroy the planet or whatever it is. And when he encounters like resistance from various people, when he encounters resistance from the military or from politicians, it's this frustrating thing where they're not being like just Kathy Bates in this movie, right? She's the politician government figure, and the way she responds to everything in this with such aggression and such like not even trying to understand what he's saying to them or what he's asking for. Like, I get why she's going to say like, oh, you can't just walk in and talk to everyone at the UN, right? That's like, you have to have kind of clearance, you know, there's those procedures, all that stuff. I get why she says that, but she immediately is like so hostile to every suggestion to do with Keanu Reeves in this movie. And that's the other thing, like Klaatu in this movie has like various superpowers and like, you know, these over the top,
he's an alien.
These over the top things that are like, some of them are quite laughable. There's a lie detector scene, and the way
I like that scene.
Oh my god, it's hilariously bad.
I like that scene. I thought it was kind of fun, especially because Klaatu, I love you, Keanu Reeves, but you're pretty dull in this. He's like super boring. But at least we got like one moment where like he does something to a person where he's like, oh, what's up here? Okay, we'll just see what this is going on. And you know, it was kind of interesting. I thought that scene was all right. That one was a standout to me, and there's another scene later on that I won't spoil.
Okay. Well, I guess we'll go into the spoilers in a minute then, but I really need to reiterate that this movie it's them trying to make a blockbuster out of something that was never supposed to be a blockbuster. And I think making The Day of the Earth is still a blockbuster completely misses the point of what it is. And that's where I stand.
Okay. I mean, it's just trying to do the War of the Worlds again.
Kinda, I guess.
Kind of the same thing, right? Like, it wasn't a blockbuster, and they made it a blockbuster, and they put Tom Cruise in it and had Steven Spielberg, and, you know, they made a fine film, and not a great film, but fine.
I guess. I mean, War of the Worlds, at least I can see why that translates to being a blockbuster. Like, I can see, like, oh, if they had the technology at the time, they probably would have shown more, you know, battles and stuff with the aliens, like, or whatever. Like, I understand that, the logic of that one, for, you know, for better or worse or however it turned out, you know, in the remake, but with Day of the Earth Stood Still, it's like, no, this film was perfect. It worked exactly as it was. Whereas War of the Worlds, at least, when I do watch a movie like that, I go, yeah, this is very limited by its time period. But Day of the Earth Stood Still was perfect. It didn't need to be touched.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. It is a perfect film. I love that film. It does, when I watch it again, it does remind me of like the Twilight Zone. Like, it just around the same time when it was out, and it's just very you could see it being a two-parter Twilight Zone, like if they ever did a two-parter, you know, for like the hour-long episodes where it would probably be a standout, you know. But you're right, like it is more of a talky film than it is a shooty film.
Yeah, that is the better for it. And I think this is just a hollow CG filled Hollywood movie. Like there's no soul to this. It is completely empty.
Yeah, I mean, there is something to say about like when we watched the original, and I was just so blown away by it, knowing that I had seen this version before and going, I just don't remember how I felt at all watching that movie.
Yeah, because you'd watched when we did the original, that was your first time watching it, right?
That was my first time, yeah.
Oh.
And I had seen this one in theaters.
Yeah. So, you know, I have nothing to recommend with this. I would say skip this at all costs. It is just a soulless experience, and go watch the original instead. It's much better. So, spoilers, full spoilers for The Day the Earth Stood Still remake from 2008. You've been warned. So there's a scene at the start, and I was waiting for it to be relevant, like the whole movie. I was waiting for it to come back up. So there's a scene at the start before the titles, which is set in 1928, where a human, presumably, where they got the image of Klaatu from, Keanu Reeves is like, you know, he's in the snowy mountains in India, and he encounters this orb that's already here, and it like marks his hand, and it's like it's taking a sample of DNA so that one day it can, you know, turn someone into like him. And I'm like, okay, I guess they felt the need to explain why he looks like Keanu Reeves, when I don't think anyone was ever going to ask that question.
Well, certainly not in the original movie, but in this one they might, because it's a modern day thing. You can't really get away with 50s sci-fi logic.
Why does it matter? What human he looks like?
Well, I mean, I guess they don't have to explain how they got it, but like explaining that he comes from, he's grown in like a species kind of way, you know, at least gives us something.
But we could get that anyway from like all the transformation stuff.
Yeah.
I suppose. I don't know. This just felt redundant to me. Especially later on when we find out there's another one who's been living here for like 70 years. I'm like, okay, see, we get it. Like they do this. They know how to do this. You know, I don't know. I thought it was going to be relevant, or so like someone was going to find a photo of this guy and be like, hey, he existed before, or something.
He was the first one to climb K2. Yeah.
But yeah, so we're introduced to Jennifer Connelly, who's a science teacher. Her TA tries to ask her out, kind of, and she politely says she can't, and that never comes up again. It's not relevant.
Yeah, I guess it's just explaining a bit of her character, that she's single and not interested in dating.
Yes. I'm not sure how important this is still. There's a lot of things at the start of this movie that feel like they're just here because like movies like this have these types of scenes at the start, and not because it really tells us anything. The first scene that really tells us anything, I mean, I suppose it tells us our job, like, but it gives us that, I suppose. But like the little interaction with him, just because I was expecting him to pop up again somewhere in the movie, and he never does. But it's when she goes home and we meet her stepson that she's now the single parent of.
He's playing World of Warcraft.
Yes, awesome. And it has a Halo 3 poster as well. The time period is like, you know, screaming at you when you're watching this. But
he's Alliance though, so yeah, he can die. Well, it was like 2 years of my life, man. Come on, give me a break. Oh, okay, Mr. Hotshot. High on your horse right now.
I play more video games than you do. Well, probably. I'm not actually sure if I do, but I mean, I certainly match it. But yeah, I'm looking down at you for World of Warcraft, okay?
Hey, just because you were too young for it.
I wasn't too young. I had friends who played it.
Then you didn't have the great internet to play it.
Man, I just didn't want to play.
Well, sucks to be you. Sucks to your ass, Mar. Because it's a fantastic game when it came out. I loved it.
Yeah. So we're introduced to them, and then basically right away, she's not even served dinner when the government show up and say, hey, we need to bring you in. And they've cleared a highway, Even the guy taker doesn't know what it's for. He's just got his orders, and they go to like there's like a college campus or something, wherever it is, where the military's all taken over, and John Hamm knows who she is. And I thought this was weird. This is just a small nitpick, but it's a weird one where he sees her like in the checkpoint when she's coming inside, right, with all the crowd, and he says, "Hey, that's what's her name? Helen." I don't even recognize. Did anyone call her Helen the whole movie? Like, yeah. Helen, come here. Like, and he gets like some of the soldiers to let her in, and rushes her in. It's like, hey, I'll need to take you to the briefing room, and you need to explain this. And he rushes her in. The reason why I thought this was a little bit weird is because when we actually get the briefing, when they're in the room and he's explaining what's going on, and there's this unidentified object which is speeding up, and it's course corrected, it's going to hit Manhattan in an hour. One of the guys she was talking to in like the truck that she came in with, who had to go through the crowd, is in here as well. And I thought, well, why did you rush her through? Because clearly all the other scientists and stuff who were on this truck got in here anyway on time.
Well, he knows her personally, so I think he's going to give her more info so that she's prepared. And also gives her a reason to hold on to her cell phone.
I don't buy any of that, but sure. Okay. She already had a cell phone under her shirt before he said anything, and he rushes her straight to this briefing where everyone else is going to be anyway. So the rushing her there accomplished nothing.
Well, it's probably a deleted scene or something.
Doesn't justify anything. It was weird.
It doesn't bother me.
It's just I felt like it was trying to do this like it's trying to fake the drama and the hysteria of like, oh, they rush her through, this is all very like like last minute, and we have to like tensions are high, and it's all, everything has to move quickly. But then it kind of negated its own point. I don't know, like it felt phony to me, like it was trying really hard to have this feel, and just it was
I did think it was strange that they called in all these emergency scientists only to let them know that we have like what 17 hours max before it hits
70 minutes,
like 70 minutes before it collides with Earth anyway, and everyone's just gonna die. That's what they assume is gonna happen, because it just looks like it's on a collision course.
Yeah, at the very least, like Manhattan's screwed, which notably, I think they're near. I want to say, are they near Manhattan?
I think they're in DC or the Pentagon or something. Okay. So maybe Virginia or Maryland or something like that.
Okay.
Not too far, yeah.
So they're thinking extinction event kind of thing. Obviously, it slows down, and this orb is like in Central Park, and like, they come in, and lo and behold, the military shoot Klaatu. He's not human yet. He just walks out. He's got like he's sort of glowing a light. And Jennifer Connelly, for some reason, she's allowed to be at the front in a hazmat suit. She's important enough to.
Well, that's what John Hamm told her when he pulled her aside early. So you're gonna lead this. You're gonna be in charge.
So he gets shot, and they have to take him in, and as the guy, the surgeon's operating on him, like the gooey like exterior skin starts peeling off, and it's like, oh, this is like a cocoon or something, and sure enough, we get very Matrixy actually, wet Keanu Reeves in the goo, coming out the pod,
shaved head and everything.
Yep. His hair grows pretty fast actually, now that you mention it.
Well, they said that it's some sort of fast growth version of a human.
Okay.
Because they say, like, here are the photographs over the last, like, 3 days, and you can see his hair growing. Who cuts it? I don't know. It just grows in a perfect style.
Did they say it'd been 3 days?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I missed that little detail. So Kathy Bates comes in, and she's all, like, hoity-toity, and like the president's in hiding because more aliens might show up. So she's like the one that's out in the world acting as president, because she's the Secretary of Defense, I think she said. Yeah, I mean, I don't even know where to go from here. I mean, what?
Yeah, I didn't mind her. I mean, she's She's very good at being intimidating. She's a scary lady.
She's just too one note. She feels like a parody of like a character I've seen in like 10 other movies.
I suppose. I mean, she's just there to represent the government for us, for the audience.
One of the things that was bugging me as the movie was going on, actually, is that it was very, very clear what the subtext was and what he was saying, but all the humans were too stupid to understand it. You know, there's a moment where Jennifer Connelly says, you know, are you a friend of us? And he's like, I'm a friend of Earth. Like, are you here to save us? I'm here to save Earth. And she's like, from who? And he gets, you know, he sees something and gets distracted. And I'm like, I wonder what he's saving Earth from. I wonder what it could be.
He's Klaatu, but he's also the Lorax. You know, he speaks for the trees.
Just so by the time it clicks for her, like really late on in the film, where he's like, "You're here to save Earth from us," and the music sort of swells up. I'm like, yeah, a round of applause. She finally got it. Very good.
I don't know. I mean, I had already seen it, so I knew what it was going to be anyway. But I'm not quite sure if it would have been a surprise or not. Watching it for the first time now.
It wouldn't have been. It's so obvious. It's so obvious.
Sometimes I don't get the obvious.
No comment. That's not true. You always get the obvious, Tara.
No, that's not true at all. I know what I am. It's all right.
I'm pandering, okay? I'm just pandering.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, she's there to represent the government, and she's the same character that a man played in the original film, and it was a lot more frustrating when those scenes where he's just like, I need to talk to world leaders. This concerns all of Earth, not just the president of the United States. And just, yeah, with Kathy Bates in this film, it should work, but for some reason it's not working with me when I watch it. It's just not, I'm not feeling that same sort of frustration. I'm not sure why exactly.
It's because Klaatu doesn't come across with the same calm confidence that he does in the original film. In the original film, it feels like a smart being who is trying to reach out, and that's why you side with him.
That's why it doesn't work, because Keanu can never pass for a smart being.
I'm not saying that, but
I am an FBI agent.
No, but the way he comes across in this though is like he doesn't like act kind. You know, he's very stoic in a way that the original Klaatu was not. So it's very hard to sort of sympathize with him. Although by the end I was rooting for him to like wipe out humanity, but I mean that's not because he was like winning me over. It's just because humanity did the opposite.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if it's around this time or not that the world starts going into disarray. Everything's being looted and fires are starting and people just are leaving because they think the Earth it's the end of the world, so they're just panicking.
Yeah. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that it's not for some reason. It's not just like happenstance that Kathy Bates' character and her resistance to Klaatu is not working. Like there is reasons for it. It's a problem that is perpetuating throughout the movie. Is that this woman and her child are supposed to be the things that convince him that humanity should not be destroyed, that they deserve a chance, and you know, especially since the arc that sort of gives him this lesson, which is that the kid eventually stops wanting him to be dead, and then eventually says that he's sorry. He didn't mean it. That when he said that, you know, Klaatu should be killed, he's he's sorry about it. And then he has his heart to heart with his mother, where he cries into her arms with the horrible acting that I was mocking earlier that made me laugh. And this is the moment.
Call her mom.
And this is the moment where Keanu says, humans have the ability to change. I see that now. And I'm like, what? Why? What about this told you that? And particularly in reference to, you know, not screwing up the planet. What about this arc with the child and mother gave you that lesson?
Well, I mean, it happens after he meets the professor who's telling him, like, well, how did your species do it? Like, surely you guys had some blunders along the way, but then you made it. And he's like, yes, we did. And John Cleese, the professor, is like, well, that's where we're at right now. But, humans always change when we're right at the brink of failure, or right at the brink of whatever, destruction. That's when the change happens. So, I mean, Jaden Smith has been, hold on. Jaden Smith has been a complete dickhead throughout the whole movie to Klaatu. And then he's about to run away from him in fear and fall off a bridge, but he gets saved as somebody saves him. And after that, he treats him like a person. He treats him like a friend. He treats him with respect. And the kid's not an asshole anymore to like anyone. He's good. He's nice to his mom. So that's like the visual thing that Klaatu sees. He sees this child go from somebody who is needs to change and won't change and is resistant to it, to somebody who gets saved and says, okay, I know what's better now.
My problem with the ending, when he sees the son and mother have this heart to heart and says humans have the ability to change, and it's true, like on the precipice is when you learn to evolve, and the arc here is not the humans, it's him. He's the one who's on the precipice and is choosing to sacrifice himself to save humanity. And like this kid's arc, like, I'm not saying this couldn't work. I'm not saying it couldn't work, that he sees through one child, one person learning something about themselves, that could work. The problem is that this child's performance, and not even just the performance, I don't want to put it all on the actor, the writing of this child is so one note. It's so nag, you're not my mom, my dad's dead, I wish my dad was here, my dad would kill the aliens. And then it flips completely. Right? After one moment, it just completely flips. And from then on, he's kind of nice to him. And he has the heart to heart with the mother. And Keanu just sort of takes this as, oh, humans can change. But the problem is that, like, most of humanity that's causing all the problems are all the adults. They've already grown up. Like, yeah. There is nothing about this that is convincing to me that it's proof that humans will actually solve any of these other problems.
Well, I mean, the boy is supposed to represent like a microcosm of the macro. So, like, if he could change, then like we're at the brink of destruction, not just of ourselves by ourselves, but Gort is going to destroy us too, and has destroyed quite a bit of things already. So this is where we need a savior, and this is where Klaatu has to save us.
Yeah, he becomes
so
Jesus.
That we can change after.
He becomes Jesus, and this is bullshit. It turns Klaatu into this Jesus figure who sacrifices himself to save humanity. Mm-hmm. This is trite.
Yeah, I think it would have been better if the other alien did it. The one that actually like sees humanity as a failure, but chooses to stay human and die with them anyway because he loves them.
Yeah, he sounded far more interesting, to be honest, as a character.
Well, Klaatu's a little dull in this, yeah. I mean, I'm saying, like, on paper, I don't think any of these ideas are bad. Like, I think it's okay. Yeah, the execution's not great, and, Jaden Smith was not good in this, and I don't know if it's his fault, because I don't think he's a terrible child actor in other films I've seen him in. But, it's... I don't know. I guess I'm not as upset about it as you, but it definitely is. It pales in comparison to the original and how effective that was. And yeah, I think you're right. I think the idea of Klaatu having to have an arc to believe in humanity, maybe it's because of the message being changed from nuclear destruction to climate change, where, we need to have some hope for humanity. So if someone else can see it in us, then we can see it. I don't know. All the climate change movies have been pretty disastrous, in their messaging, and haven't really gotten anyone to see any light. So maybe it's just not a message that we're able to really get through to people.
Like, this movie is so, like, generic, and it's so hollow in its attempts to be a blockbuster, to the point where Gort turns into nanites and starts, like, just eating people and materials. He just, like, disintegrates them. It's like it's chewing through them. So you get this scene where this truck is just, like, sort of disintegrated from the back, and the driver's disintegrated, and it's disintegrating street signs, and it disintegrates like a person, because they actually have Gort like trap's not the right word, because Gort can basically just leave whenever he wants. He's just not being attacked, so he's not hostile.
Yeah.
But like, we get these scenes of like him just chewing through people, and the idea is that every time it chews something, it grows into more nanites. So eventually, it's just going to consume the entire like man-made world.
Yeah, it looks like they're maybe like the size of fleas, and every time it consumes something, it's able to regenerate or duplicate itself. So it's just this growing threat, that's unstoppable and expanding at this, infinite rate that. I actually thought it was a neat idea. I couldn't remember what they did when I was watching. I'm like, how does Gort? I know Gort becomes like a threat, and does he unleash a virus? I couldn't quite remember. And then when they showed it, I thought, oh, that's actually kind of a neat way. Like when you see them duplicate and stuff, and it's intimidating. When he's first, when Gort first makes the little fleas appear. And there's a guy in there, and they're like, you can't come out because your arm's disintegrating. And, we see that happen, and then it starts to come through the glass. And then Coach Taylor dies, which is, he was in this movie also. Kyle Chandler.
But yeah, basically when he like goes over to the orb and like sacrifices himself to turn off the nanites, it still like turns off every like all the factories turn off, all the electronics turn off, the cars all stop moving. So I don't know if the ending's actually just saying, oh, he's actually just like taking away all technology and like we're all in the Stone Age again.
I wonder if that's an interesting idea. So like if because then maybe those nanites are still there. So if you start using electricity again, it can activate the nanites. So there's this constant threat. Because the original film is, look, you guys have nuclear power. You guys have nuclear weapons. You're now a threat. And the only way that we keep our own civilizations in check, because there are many civilizations out there, planets out there, is that we have these police systems, which is if we start to turn on ourselves or on anyone else, these Gorts will come out and destroy us. So it's like our mutually assured destruction thing. So maybe, is that what they're saying with this? Is that the nanites, if you guys start to create more technology, then they'll reactivate and just destroy us?
I mean, it's shit if that is what they're saying, because humanity's not learned anything. They're just being policed.
Well, if that's what it needs to be in order to... Because Klaatu has been saying from the beginning, it's not our world. Like, we share this world. So if we can't share with the other species on this planet, then maybe we deserve to be wiped out.
And we haven't even talked about all the crappy scenes of the military trying to interact with Gort, and all the bad kind of side characters who give one-liners as they're trying to like fly drones into Gort, and Gort's like shooting them down or taking control of them and launching them into the tanks that are in Central Park, or like there's a lot of like, well, what else we going to do now? And what's so weird about this is in the original film, when the military tried to like do anything with Gort, it had a point, because the whole point of the movie was that it was talking about conflict. It was talking about conflict escalating into fighting, into warfare, and ultimately into nuclear weapons. It was part of the key theme. But because the theme of this movie is supposed to be climate change and like how we're treating the planet, like all of this is just like wacky side comedy, pretty much. It doesn't really serve much purpose.
I do think it's odd that they felt the need to name him Gort because of an acronym.
Oh yeah, I hated this as well. No, this was so stupid.
So Klaatu doesn't actually call him Gort. It's us that give him the name.
This is bullshit. This is more bullshit remake and prequel nonsense. Is the name has to mean something, so we're going to give it an acronym that spells Gort, and we have a character go, hey, these like military and their acronyms look crazy. These guys, right? I'm like, piss off. This is every shitty trope of 2000s Hollywood cinema. This is garbage.
Genetically organized robotic technology or something like that.
I think that sounds right. It was something like that.
Yeah, it was dumb. It was a dumb line. Definitely didn't need to be there. Keanu just could have called him Gort at any point. Did he not say Klaatu Barada Nikto?
I don't think so.
At any point?
I don't think so.
Klaatu Barada? Yeah.
I don't think he ever said it. You do get him fixing the formula on the blackboard. for John Cleese to find. Which is, I mean, it feels like it's just there as a callback to the original. It doesn't really serve much purpose. Because in the original, like, it's what kind of wins over the scientist, and the scientist is kind of like instrumental for the others to believe what he's saying and things like that. Here, it's just kind of, I don't know.
Well, Jennifer Connelly takes him to the professor to say, look, the people you're trying to talk to, they're not really our leaders. This is our leader. I think her reason for saying that is that she wants, we respect scientists still on our planet. So, and this is somebody that you could probably have a conversation with, and somebody who has an understanding in another way that you do. So I guess that's why they go to him. She does make the comment of, oh, he won a Nobel Prize, and if I hadn't framed it for him, it'd probably still be in a drawer, which I guess was trying to imply that he's like a nerdy, slobby guy who doesn't care about things, but like, it's a really nice place and it's very well decorated, so that kind of clashed a bit.
Yeah, I don't think, because the ultimate ending of this segment though is John Cleese telling her, you have to convince him, like, it's going to, like, the only way to convince him is humanity, is to like make him connect with us and feel the need to save us, which conceptually I don't have a problem with, but it does make a lot of this segment feel like it's just there to be a homage to the original, because they want to have that moment in there where he fixes the formula. I don't think it needs to be here. It doesn't need to be him. It's just conflating things for the sake of it more than anything else. And then we get the big helicopter scene where he makes helicopters crash into, because this thing we didn't even talk about what his powers were. We hinted at it earlier, spoiler free, but he can like connect to electric like items, whatever it may be. You can connect to any sort of electrical machine. He like revives a guy with a car at one point by like sucking all the energy out of the car, and this is after he's the one who like crushes him between two cars because the cops try to arrest him, and he like makes the car fly into him, and then he like resuscitates him with the power of the police car. But the lie detector test scene made me laugh out loud, because the way this guy like sort of electrocutes when Keanu Reeves decides to like send a signal back through the cables, he sort of does this thing where he kind of slides under the table and goes back, so it looked really goofy to me. And then he like sends a signal through all of the base, and all the soldiers all start getting like headaches. They all start grabbing their heads. He has all these magic powers. He's a lot more supernatural, I guess, in this version. Which again makes him really intimidating to a point where you can see why people would be scared of him. Which I do think robs it of something, and it's not just that I think it pales in comparison to the original, because obviously it does, but I don't think it succeeds in anything it's doing in its own right. I also think it's a very ugly film. I think most of the performances are not good. I think the core emotional arc, which is the mother-son dynamic, like, I actively dislike them, especially the son, but I dislike both of them, to be honest. I think they both have nothing in this. Like, Jennifer Connelly's character is a blank slate who is there to move the plot forward. Like, I feel nothing from her.
I didn't really mind her so much. I agree that the mother-son relationship doesn't really work. And that is supposed to be like the heart of humanity that changes Klaatu's mind, but...
You said you didn't mind her. I mean, there's a big leap from...
I think I like Jennifer Connelly in general. Like, I don't think she's I enjoy seeing her, but yeah,
but listen to what you're saying though. You're not praising anything in the movie. You're saying I like seeing Jennifer Connelly. Like, that's an indictment. That is an indictment of the movie. That's what you have to go to. Is, I guess I kind of like some of these actors that are here. Yeah,
I mean, I genuinely like Keanu Reeves. I just don't think he's a very good Klaatu, because he's just too dull. It doesn't work. And I like Jennifer Connelly. I think she's fine in this. She's trying. I think maybe they just should have got a different person to play the son that would have more chemistry with her.
I mean, the writing is the bigger problem, though. I mean, his performance isn't good, but like the writing of their relationship is very... I mean, it's very cliched for a start, right? It's very straightforward, and it's very, like, you've seen it done before. I think rather than having a scene of Keanu Reeves in the mountains in the past, maybe the scene at the start that gave us some backstory is maybe a scene with the father to maybe give us a sense of what they've lost, perhaps. I also think that because they just have them constantly talk about the fact that the father's missing and that dad would do this, dad would do that, like sometimes less is more. And I think if you just saw them interacting with each other and you could get a sense that something's missing and it's kind of an awkward relationship, rather than them just spelling out, like one of the first things they do in the same scene together is she's like, where did you get this? She picks up a razor and she's like, where did you get this? And he's like, I found it in the bathroom downstairs. And she's like, this was your father's. I know, it's mine now. And I'm like, all right, like beat me over the head with what you're doing here, movie. Come on, like you can do this in a way where I can like get the sense of relationship. Like give me some subtlety for the love of all things, please. Mm-hmm. But no, it's constant. Dad would do this. Dad's not here anymore. Yeah.
Well, I mean, he does kind of have a false memory of his father, right? Because like he keeps saying, "Oh, dad's a killer. Dad would kill this guy. Dad would protect us. Dad was the one who would save me." But he wasn't. Like, he just has his dad was a scientist, just like her. That's how they connected and had a relationship form out of. But he seems to think that because dad's gone, he no longer has protection. And she's not going to do it. She's not enough. Which I think is why I like the scene where Keanu saves him and then that changes his mind, is supposed to work.
Yeah, it's almost like the original film, which the son kind of like latched on to Klaatu as like a potential father figure because he was missing that in his life, made more sense.
It's okay. It's at least Jennifer Connelly says like, we can still fix ourselves. She has hope for humanity.
Yeah, but even those are just like really generic lines that don't mean anything. Like, she never convinces me. Like I'm sitting there going, I don't believe you. I don't believe we can change. Like,
well, it could also be because this is like 15 years later, and we still haven't done anything about climate change.
Yeah, I don't think it was convinced at the time either, though. The problem is that it's all just surface level, like, platitudes. There's no real commitment to change. I mean, hell, the world leaders, like our representation of the world leaders, which is Kathy Bates, never even like has a moment where she goes, like, oh yeah, we do have to like change how do we do some things. Like, she never even like accepts that. So if the character who's there to represent the rest of the world never even like acknowledges that a change should happen, even if it's not a case of, oh, here's what the plan is and here's all the things we're going to do, and here, like, that's too much to get into, and obviously that's also answering the questions that we don't necessarily have answers for yet, so you can't really expect the movie to do that. But all you would necessarily need is for her to just acknowledge that we need to do something, especially since she was so against like even listening to him for most of the movie. That would actually probably mean at least a little bit of something, but she never does. Like she just looks out the window at the end as all the electronics are turning off, and just, I guess, is just thankful they're not all dead because they thought they were all going to die. But so it becomes this, it becomes just everyone's just glad they weren't murdered rather than actually learning anything.
A lot of people did die though.
A decent amount of people did die, but everyone who's left haven't learned anything.
Well, we don't know. We don't get to see the aftermath.
Well, that's not in the movie then, so it's failed completely. That's not an excuse. It's terrible. All right, do you want to rate it?
Sure. Yeah, I do think the movie is a failure. Just to recap my opening thoughts. I don't think it's completely unwatchable. I think that the movie was at least trying to do something, and it didn't make it. It didn't work, but it's. I enjoyed a couple of the scenes. I like the scene where he's being interrogated, or not interrogated, but doing the lie detector test, and that all of a sudden turning on the other guy who's doing the questioning. I thought that was a fun scene, and I like the scene with Gort in the chamber. But overall, yeah, it's not really worth your time. I'll give it a 4.5. It's a swing and a miss, but it's not the worst.
I think it's soulless. I think it's an empty Hollywood blockbuster of something that shouldn't be a blockbuster. I don't connect with any of the characters. I actively root for humanity to die by the end of the movie. It's full of horrible CG. The action scenes that are there aren't even shot well. Scott Derrickson is not good at making me care about characters, and he's not good at capturing the moments on the film. It is generally quite ugly. I think this is a failure from a spectacle level. It doesn't work as an action movie. It doesn't work as a thoughtful science fiction film that the original does. It fails in just about every conceivable level. I'll give it a 2. I'll admit the 1 out of 10 that I gave it the first time I watched it is maybe slightly harsh. I'll give it a 2 out of 10.
Okay. What are we doing next time?
I don't. Oh, Jurassic World 3.
Oh, that's right.
So
that should be fun.
there you go. But yes, I will take this time to thank our Patreon producers. Thank you very much to Tyler Hess, Cindy Palacios, David Sharp, Borna, Christopher Moy, David Brown, Al Treisman, and Alison M. Fordyce. They are patrons at a higher tier, but you can support us for less than that, can't you, Tara?
That's right. If you enjoy our reviews, please check out our Patreon page. It's patreon.com/mildfuzztv. And if you donate as low as $1 per month, you'll get access to bonus episodes for our show. So you can see what we think of the Transfer Saga or all sorts of films. The Guyver, The Brain, the Tremors sequels. We just did one of those. We only got one left. And I think Peter rated this movie lower than any of those sequels. So, just head on over and check that out if that interests you. And at the $5 tier, you get access to these reviews a day early. Thanks.
Yeah, there you go. Obviously, get us on Twitter at ScreamsMidnight. But that is otherwise us. So thank you very much for joining us. We always appreciate it. Keep watching science fiction and computer at Celsa.